Then the chief assassin was very surprised because he had just discovered that it was not the heroes who beat Kristoff. The next day, Kelvin handed the assassin to the Adventurers Guild and reported this to Rio. Rio explained that Trison was planning something because he had seen their movements from the bandits and Kristoff. Rio heard the news that Trison also had a conflict with the Gone Country. Rio understood that Trison was very careful in planning things because the city of Potsy and the country of Torage were symbols of peace for the four countries. If Trison always gives negative encouragement like the assassins did yesterday, the war between the three countries against Trison is inevitable. Rio guessed that Trison did want to fight the three countries for their own benefit. Kelvin also had to be careful because his movements would also be monitored by Trison. Then Rio gave Kelvin a letter from the King Leonhardt of the Gone Country. This letter was about the adventurer rank-up test to S rank. Kelvin had to go to an elf village on the eastern continent to complete this exam quest. Later, King Leonhardt will personally come directly to Kelvin when the exam is over. Also, King Leonhardt can change into any form for some reason. King Torage also agreed to this S rank exam, and she also told all about Kelvin to King Leonhardt. Because of that, Kelvin was given a test letter directly by King Leonhardt because Kelvin is a unique ordinary adventurer. Only a few people can reach the S rank adventurer rank. After that, Kelvin and his friends rushed to the elf village that Rio referred to earlier. Ethel felt that she recognized this village because she was from the half-elf human race. But Sarah found it strange because the eastern continent shouldn't have a half-elf human race. Melfina explained that 10 years ago, some elf residents from the western continent moved to the eastern continent. The elf village on the eastern continent was now protected by Gone Country. The current task of Kelvin and his friends is to protect the elf village as well because an S-rank monster has suddenly appeared there. They also had to be careful because the Trison country was likely involved with this monster. Then Kelvin said that all his friends should be excited because this could be a very exciting fight. Suddenly, their journey was stopped by an attack from a group of people. Kelvin immediately showed the letter from King Leonhardt, and the elf race troops would not attack Kelvin again. Then someone named Naraz approached Kelvin and his friends. He was the leader of this elf village, and Naraz apologized to Kelvin for the elf army already attacking him. But suddenly, Naraz was shocked after seeing Ethel, and Naraz thought that Ethel was a woman named Rumil.
Rumil?
Then Naraz immediately took Kelvin and his party to the house in the elf village. Naraz apologized to them once again for mistaking Ethel for Rumil. Then Kelvin wanted to ask Naraz for an explanation of who Rumil was and what was her relationship with Ethel. Kelvin tells Naraz that Ethel's memory has been lost, all she can remember is being a slave. In the past, Ethel was hit by the curse of the fire dragon god for an unknown cause. After Naraz heard Kelvin's words, he began to recount the past when Rumil was still alive. Around 20 years ago, the demi-elf lived peacefully on the western continent, including Rumil. But suddenly, there was a fire dragon god who went berserk because one of the demi-elf had insulted him. He wanted to wipe out the forest where the demi-elf lived if they didn't hand over the person who had insulted the dragon god. But the demi-elf didn't know who the culprit was because they had never interacted with the dragon god. Then the dragon god went on a rampage again, killing more than half the human half-elf population. Naraz's legs were also lost due to the devastating attack. Then Rumil deliberately approached the raging dragon god. She deliberately gave herself up as long as the dragon god did not rage again. Rumil is willing to do anything to get forgiveness from the dragon god. Then the dragon god said that Rumil should be his wife because the dragon god did not come here to look for Rumil. After that, Rumil decided to go with the dragon god and left something to Naraz. 1 year has passed, and the half-elf suddenly finds Rumil, who has died in the middle of the forest, and no one knows the cause. So, the demi-elf decided to head to the eastern continent to avoid the dragon god's rampage at that time. Then Garrett thought that Ethel was the daughter of Rumil and the dragon god. But Melfina said it was impossible because a half-elf human could only have children if they made love to an ordinary human. Even if the dragon god changed his form into an ordinary human, it would still be impossible for Rummel to give birth to a child from the dragon god. This could happen because the pulse and power of the dragon god would not be able to survive in Rummel's body. Then Kelvin concluded that Rummel must be Ethel's mother because, according to Naras, the two looked very similar. Naras apologized to Ethel because he didn't know Ethel's father or the details about what happened to Rummel. But Ethel didn't mind it. She thanked Naras for telling her about it. Ethel also has a new family, although she doesn't know what her parents are like. Then Kelvin and Naras began to discuss more serious matters. Kelvin had read the letter from King Leonhardt, the monsters who targeted this village and his followers to kidnap the half-elf. Naras said that the surrounding forest had been given barrier magic to change the monsters' direction. Unfortunately, the village was still being attacked by them. 3 times the monsters have attacked this elf village, and the soldiers of the Gone country have failed to protect the village. The human half-elf army was also unable to fight against such high-level monsters. The monsters also moved in a structured manner and were very different from the usual monsters. This was very strange. Kelvin knew the main cause of this attack. In his mind, he thought there was a special skill to break through the barrier magic. Therefore, Kelvin and his friends can be visited this village. Then Kelvin suggested a plan to Naras, and this plan would definitely not be penetrated by the monsters. Sarah and Garrett thought Kelvin must be planning something crazy again like before. Kelvin is very interested in the opponent he will face now and can't wait for the next fight. At night, it turned out that Rio's guess was correct that the country of Trison had wreaked havoc again. The Trison army would approach the elf village with the monsters that had been controlled by a weapon that Asgard had spoken of back then. The S-rank necklace came from Tristan, who had planned this when the Trison and Gaunt countries had a conflict. While they were having fun due to the success of the Trison country in attacking the elf village, suddenly, they were attacked by someone from a distance. It turned out that the attack came from Kelvin and his party. Kelvin's plan was very structured. He made a giant wall with magic to protect the village. He also made archery stand for Ethel to make it easier to attack. Kelvin gave an S-rank bow weapon to Ethel so she could shoot from a great distance like this. A moat with magic water that can destroy anything has also been made outside the wall. Garrett will guard the gate, while Sarah, Melfina, Ryan, and Alex will beat the monsters controlled by the Trison army around the forest. Sarah also said that Garrett needed to relax and sleep in front of the gate because Sarah would kill all the enemies alone. Melfina and Ryan also don't want to lose to Sarah because they want to get praise from Kelvin. Then Kelvin's plan begins. Sarah easily defeats many monsters in the forest. Melfina and Ryan finished off Trison's army without being left. Then one of the Trison soldiers went to the army commander, who reported that all the Trison troops had disappeared in just a few minutes. The strength of the people who defeated the Trison army was insane, as B-rank and S-rank monsters could be defeated easily. Then Melfina, Ryan, and Alex arrived at the headquarters of the commander of the Trison army while Sarah was still having fun fighting the monsters. Then the commander of the Trison army immediately summoned a giant S-rank monster and ordered it to defeat the people who hindered Trison's country's plans. Then Melfina suggested Ryan defeat the monster with Alex. This was also an exercise in case there was a solo battle that Ryan would face in the future. Ryan agreed to Melfina's suggestion and would fight the giant S-rank monster with Alex. Ryan managed to defeat the giant monster in a matter of seconds. However, the Trison army's commander still had the giant monster's transformation. This time his strength was much greater than before. But Ryan and Alex weren't worried because their techniques and skills were way above the monster.
まあやることは変わんないけどね。だってエピルネーの炎より全然弱そうなんだもん。
大丈夫だ、リオンなら。
うん。
ジェネレーション。メルネ、やったよ僕。
The giant monster can die with just one attack. Sarah was disappointed that she wasn't given the most fun part of the fight this time. Meanwhile, Melfina, Kelvin, and Ethel are proud of Ryan for growing fast. The sword technique that Garrett taught was also helpful to Ryan. But suddenly, Ethel and Kelvin were attacked by someone with mighty strength.
強い。死んでないね。